Well, here I still am, and here you still are, so I thought I would read you bits from another of my books. This one is Joseph's Boy, which is kind of like the prequel to Jairus' Girl. It's about the birth of Jesus, as you can see. This time, the main character is Jamie. For the sake of the story, I'm pretending that Jamie was actually the older brother of Jesus, that Joseph had been married before, just so that I have a child who I can tell the story through. Jamie's 6 when the story starts, and he and his dad Joseph have come down to Jerusalem to celebrate one of the festivals, and they're staying at the home of Miriam, who is also 6. Joseph one day takes them both to the temple. The temple building certainly was dazzling, towering 15 stories above all the other buildings in the city. The intricate carvings and sheer sweep of gold would take anyone's breath away. Joseph could have taken a professional interest in the craftsmanship, as he was an experienced carpenter himself in his own quiet way. But nothing could lure him away from his real interest, what the building stood for. This was where God had chosen to live and told King David there should be a home for the Ark of the Covenant and God's actual presence. Joseph and Jamie burst into the paved area in front of the vast bank of steps that led up to the gates and stopped as they always did to take it in. Miriam followed close behind, seeing the wonder on their faces and looking at the building through their eyes, though she was so used to it. What wasn't purest gold was shining white marble, and what wasn't marble or gold was precious jewels. The elaborate golden vine that ran all the way down from the top of the central block had clusters of grapes as tall as Joseph. They climbed the wide steps and swept through the Huldah gates into the wide and airy court of the Gentiles. Life itself was larger than life in this courtyard. Everything was taken to the extreme. The noise, the excitement, the activity. Jamie always felt you could probably get anything you wanted here. God had been very clear he wanted this temple to be open for everyone to come and worship. A house of prayer for all nations, not just Jewish people descended from the sons of Jacob. So this outer court was available to all. Everyone welcome had slid over time to anything goes, which meant that there was no longer much prayer going on. Merchants came from all over the Roman Empire and beyond to sell exotic food and drink, silken clothes, and animals like parrots and peacocks. One wondrous time, Jamie had even had a monkey climb over him and settle on the top of his head. It shouldn't have been there in the temple. It wasn't on the list of animals considered clean in Jewish law, so Joseph had shooed it off him pretty sharpish, but Jamie couldn't help looking around hopefully every time he came back. As well as the traders in things, there were traders in money. In the temple, you could only offer the traditional Hebrew coins. That meant that the money changers charged, well, whatever they wanted, really. There was nowhere else for the worshippers to go. Have you ever seen a stock exchange from one of the world's greatest financial cities, with dealers haggling and shouting and signalling to each other as the rates go up and down? Imagine that chaos, but outside, in a spectacular sun-drenched courtyard, and without all the modern cell phones and huge screens. Instead, people from all over the empire, in dazzling multicoloured robes, herds of sheep and goats alongside doves and pigeons in wicker cages, all bleating or cooing to be free. Tucked away here and there behind a pillar, trying to get a little peace, someone would be praying. That just had to be a Gentile. Nobody would attempt that here, in the wildest marketplace on earth, with people tripping over them, unless they had no other choice. This was supposed to be their special place. Jamie knew he should probably feel bad for those still trying to use the courtyard as somewhere holy, but he thought they did look funny. He watched one man muttering with his eyes screwed shut and his arms clamped round his ears, trying to come close to God. "It's not right," frowned Miriam, looking at the man. "It doesn't matter," said Jamie. We are God's chosen people. Our father Abraham was picked out by God specially. He was on a roll now, straining to remember what his teacher, the rabbi back in Nazareth, had said. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jacob's sons, Judah and Levi and their brothers. This was great. He'd got one over on Miriam now that he'd started at the synagogue school. She wouldn't know any of this stuff. We're descended from them, so we're more special, concluded Jamie. You think, said Miriam. There was something about her that always made Jamie feel she could read his thoughts. Everyone's made in God's actual image. If you look down on people because they're not like you, you're looking down on God. Jamie opened his mouth and then closed it again just to have something to do. Dang it all, how did she do it? He knew that. It was the whole Adam and Eve thing, wasn't it? The first people. Right at the beginning of the Holy Writings. The very beginning bit of the bit that was actually called beginning bit. Genesis, if you want the fancy word. How could he have forgotten? Of course, he managed, looking concerned about the Gentile guy. It's so wrong. The temple was designed like an onion, or one of those Russian dolls, layer within layer, each ring taking you closer to the presence of God. So together they passed through a gate in the wall into the next onion ring. The court of women. What a difference. Calm space, peppered with shade and secluded corners. No crowds, just clusters of people seated here and there, talking in hushed tones. You wouldn't dare sit down in the outer court. You'd be scared a whole family of acrobats would somersault into your lap. Or a monkey. Or a whole family of acrobatic monkeys. Miriam sucked in a slow breath, her eyes alight. This was where she had wanted to get to, and she had no intention of rushing away. Jamie admitted to himself that he was also happy enough for now. There was something about the tranquility of this court that was catching, even to a fidget butt like him. He looked around to spot one particular person. The least, the drabbest, the tiniest, the poorest, the wrinkliest, and certainly the oldest little old lady you ever did see, and probably the most devoted to God. Jamie couldn't imagine Anna looking young. She looked as if she'd started at 80, not 0 like normal people. Yet Anna had been young and beautiful and married, though only for 7 years. Her husband had died when she was still young and beautiful, so everyone had said how easy it would be for her to find another husband. Her father was called Phanuel, and her mother was called Latoya. She wasn't. I made that up because someone wanted me to name a character in this book after their cat. Phanuel and not Latoya were very confident that they could get another man for her, lickety-spit, but Anna had other ideas. She'd heard in the Holy Writings how God looks after widows and orphans, how he himself would be their husband or their father, and nothing was going to rob her of that. She decided that if God intended to be her husband, then she had better move into his house. So one day she left the house of Phanuel and not Latoya and arrived at the temple with just the clothes she was wearing and a shawl for warmth. And that's where she still was, 83 years after her husband had died. Praying, worshipping, fasting, and nodding off, propped up against the marble pillars with the shawl wrapped round her. As much a part of the temple, and just as at home, as the little sparrows who nested in the roof. Jamie and Miriam picked out Anna sitting under a far colonnade and turned eagerly to Joseph, pleading, "Can we?" Joseph smiled. Looking after someone like Anna is the kind of worship God likes best. He got out a big piece of cheese and a honeyed oatcake. They took the food and hurtled over to Anna, stopping abruptly as they realized she was at prayer. Anna opened an eye, aware of the sudden stampede of 6-year-old feet in her direction. She finished what she'd been saying to God. Then she opened her eyes properly with a lovely smile, which really was just as beautiful as when she was young. "Hello, Jamie. Hello, Mim." They pressed forward eagerly with their gifts and gave her a big hug. There was something about Anna's eyes, crinkly from smiles more than old age, deep pools of love. She looked at Jamie the way he hoped his mother might have looked at him when he was too little to remember. A look like hot honeyed milk for the soul. Anna hadn't had children of her own, and it was as if she'd decided to take to herself every child since to make up for it. "We've been talking about the holy writings," said Miriam, just a tad too smugly. "Jamie had forgotten that the Gentiles are made in God's image too." Anna homed her gaze in on Miriam, warm as a kitten's fur, penetrating as its claw. Jamie felt Miriam tense slightly next to him as the sharp yet fluffy drill plunged into her heart. He was glad someone could have the effect on her that she always had on him. "I'm sure he remembers now," said Anna. "Yes, I do," said Jamie. "I think. But the rabbi at home says we are special." "Oh, we are," said Anna. "But it's because God called our ancestor Abraham to trust him and leave everything to go on a long journey, never to return." "Why?" asked Jamie and Miriam, their eyes round. "He wanted to separate them from his ordinary life, because he planned to make a whole nation from him, us, who would also be separate, holy, set apart." "Why?" asked Jamie and Miriam, hardly daring to breathe. "Because he wanted one day to bring a great and holy king from this nation who would defeat the enemy and bring perfect peace." "David," said Jamie. David was a great king. Jamie was descended from him. Jamie believed that he was a prince. "David was a mighty king," agreed Anna, interrupting Jamie's recurrent daydream. "But the peace he brought wasn't perfect. It didn't even last his own lifetime. This anointed one, or Messiah, that we wait for, the son of David, will be something more. God has a big plan. I'm not sure we understand yet how big." "Why?" asked Jamie and Miriam, nearly crawling onto her knee to get the answer. "Because this king will reign forever. He's coming to rescue us, but he's coming to rescue all the other nations too. How can he defeat everyone's enemy? We all have different enemies. We are each other's enemy half the time." Jamie listened open-mouthed. This was different from the teaching at school. Rabbi Asher had it down pat about this anointed one. He was going to be an amazing soldier who would come wading in with a whacking great sword and drive the Romans and their puppet king Herod out of the land. It was one of the few things at school Jamie was sure he understood. Anna's take on the story was unsettling. How could this long-awaited warrior rescue the Jewish people from the Romans and somehow rescue the Romans at the same time? How could he bless the invaders while he was kicking them out with said whacking great sword? Jamie sneaked a look at his dad sitting behind to see if he looked offended at this interpretation. Joseph was very hot on the scriptures. He would know. "We don't understand it yet, but it will be amazing," said Joseph. "It'll be better than we could imagine. The Holy Writings say all nations will be blessed through the one who will come from our people." Again with the blessing and nothing with the sword. Jamie was sure there was something about a sword. If there wasn't, there should have been. A proper story needs blood. But Joseph and Anna seemed lost in the wonder of it.